Here we go again.
Showtime.
Showtime.
That's what it says. Showtime. It's ready.
Coming to you live from RSA conference, aka my office
Your office.
in
Sorry,
LA.
we're all in your office today.
You're all guests in my office,
There you
or at
go.
least in this virtual world that we have been using, Sean, to
That's right.
connect with people that are actually at RSA conference. And I'm lost in the count of how many people we talked to so far, maybe 10, 11. But this one is special, I have to say. Charity
Well, it's
Wright.
always it's always special.
This one, I don't know. She always makes me smile, and I maybe because I remember when we met the first time, which was RSA Singapore
Yes.
Singapore.
a few years ago, and I don't know. I love to go there, so kind of missing the fact that
Hmm.
apart that I'm not even in San Francisco, which is 4 hours drive from here. I missed the Singapore one.
Yeah. Well, I often think about. I mean, that obviously the location, the event, the venue, all of it is great. I especially remember meeting Charity and the conversation we have, and I lost count how many times I think about that episode and the conversation we had, and it's always in my mind when anytime we talk about networking and social and governments and just yeah, you blew my mind then, and I'm sure things have only gotten crazier since that point in time.
Meeting you guys there in Singapore really made my trip. It was so awesome to meet you guys there, and also to just maintain this friendship over the years. And I love you guys' show because we get to talk about the future. And I'm a futurist. I love talking about what's going on, what are we looking at, what threats are we facing in the future. So I'm so glad to be back here with y'all.
Oh, very excited, and thank you for finding the time. I'm sure you're quite busy there, and the first question, and then we'll talk about the future because I think things have changed quite a bit from a few years ago about
Yes.
international threat and political landscape and all of that. And I know you are an expert in that, but let's start from you're back at RSA conference on the floor after many, well, 2 years, which seems forever. That's why I say many. How does it feel?
It feels amazing. It's electric. The environment here, everyone is like running on adrenaline, I think. And also because so many of us are not used to walking city streets this much, and we've gotten lazy over the past couple of years. But it's just great. Everywhere I'm looking for familiar faces, and I'm like, oh hey, I haven't seen you in forever. And it's just this great feeling of reconnecting after so long of being isolated.
And reconnecting. I mean, we some of the conversations we talk about the vendors reconnecting with each other and the hacking community connecting with each other. I don't know. They're not necessarily looking for any specific names, but any particular engagements or interactions or events or something that stand out to you as wow, this is so needed, right?
Yes.
Zoom can't capture this.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I've noticed that have changed that I am really excited about. One is there is a greater presence of US government and foreign government officials speaking at these private sector events, which is great. And I've noticed that they're reaching out. They have booths, like the National Security Agency has a booth on the expo floor where they're recruiting, and they're having really important discussions with people that have questions about what is the mission of NSA or FBI or CISA. And it's just great to see them here creating those public private partnerships. The other night, I was walking into an Incubus concert, which I was so excited about because I love Incubus. And Chris Krebs walked off the elevator right in front of me. And I kind of fangirled. I didn't say anything because he had an entourage, but it's just great to see them walking around and making connections with us little people.
When you say you run into him at the concert, I thought it was going to be on stage. And the
That's right.
reason why I say this is because yesterday, Alyssa Miller, she had Jen Esterly
Mhm.
on her show, and they actually went to talk about music and how they love rock, and actually Boston came up, the band, and a song, and that. So I'm like, connecting with Chris Crabb. I'm like, was he on stage with Incubus? That would have been crazy.
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he
No,
was backstage and met them.
no,
Right.
him or Jen. I could totally see them like jumping in on a
Yes.
on a tune on stage.
I'm a
Well,
big fan of both of them and the work that they're doing to help us in the private sector as well. So
Yeah.
that was the first thing that I've noticed is the public-private partnerships and their presence here. And then the other thing, what was it? Oh, just so much has changed in the cybersecurity industry over the past 2 years that we've all been a part. People have been switching positions. Companies have bought other companies and merged. When I first met you guys, I worked at Insights. They have since been bought by Rapid7. And so there's just so much shifting that when I see people, I'm like, oh, you're so and so from that company. And they're like, well, I'm over at this other place now. And, it's not uncommon for people in this industry to switch companies and careers. But I've noticed that's a really big thing is companies buying other companies and kind of absorbing those employees. But it's just great to see everyone out here and see familiar faces and kind of refresh on names and companies and where we're all at.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, something we ask, I think most of the folks that have been on streaming with us the last few days. Anything stand out to you from a conversation perspective? And you can go buzzwords, you can go acronyms, you can go talking points. I don't know. Anything stand out as this seems to be the hot topic. This is what CISOs are talking about. This is what analysts are talking about. What do you hear?
Absolutely. There's 3 main topics at RSA this year: zero trust, third-party risk and third-party threats, and also, what was the third one? Cloud security. I mentioned cloud security because I have been sitting in on a lot of talks by, let's say, federal government authorities. And yesterday I got to sit in on an important one by Rob Joyce, the director of cybersecurity for NSA. And he really talked a lot about cloud security because so much has moved to the cloud over the past 2 years. And we really have to focus in on the third party threats to our cloud infrastructure. So that's definitely a theme that I see standing out, both affecting private industry and public sector as well.
And it's interesting. We're actually in the process of seeking someone on the show from NSA. So I'm working with their media relations team, whether it's Rob or someone else. I can't remember who.
Oh, awesome.
Bailey, who's also interested in having on the show. To your point, the public-private. I was wondering if Marco's dogs are around. There's the answer. I didn't get to ask him the question earlier. Yeah, because I think you mentioned the 3 topic areas. Clearly, those are driving critical infrastructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not zero trust. I'll take that out, but certainly third party and cloud. It's everywhere, right? By definition and by virtue of what it is, and clearly, public sector has a responsibility to do what they can, but I think the government has to have a role there as well, and the collaboration is key. Any other sessions that stand out from that collaboration perspective?
Well, right before this, I came from a Birds of Feather little workshop. And for those that are not familiar, it's usually 15 to 20 people sitting in kind of a circle or horseshoe. And we talk very interactively about a specific topic. And this one was about using deception to kind of derail the adversary and even collect intelligence on the adversary. And so it was a very technical talk related to cyber intrusions and TTPs. But my current role, I'm analyzing coordinated malign influence operations, so disinformation campaigns. And so I was really listening in on how are we using deception to collect intel on adversaries in network intrusions, and how can I translate that over to do the same thing in influence operations? Because I analyze Chinese propaganda and state-sponsored influence. There's music starting behind me.
We like
and
music.
It's not the dogs. That's good.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to kind of translate that over to how can we also do this in disinformation to not only disrupt the adversary, but also to glean some intel on how they work and what their objectives are. And that was really fun.
Let me go to like Sean. I remember the first conversation we had, and then you join us for some other more political, international politics, and cyber warfare conversation on the show in the past. The clear question now is, with all that has happened in this past 2 years, with the remote working, with the war going on in Ukraine and all the other stuff, I love your quick perspective on that. I know it could be an entire podcast, and I'm thinking about it, but do you think what you see now at the RSA conference, this presence of government entity, and is also driven by the change in the landscape that we're facing these threats?
Absolutely. What I'm seeing is that we have spent so much time integrating our technology around the world, even with adversary nations, that now we're questioning, was that the right move? And what if we have to decouple our technology, like what's happening with Russia right now? Sanctions on Russia means that a lot of organizations have to reassess how they do business with Russian organizations, who they do business with. And for me as a China specialist, I'm also looking at, hey, what happens in the future if China invades Taiwan? What will that mean for enterprises around the world? How will that increase our risk or threat to those organizations, let's say for espionage purposes? So that's kind of the theme I'm seeing, is that it's important for us to share intel between public and private sector. The agencies are working really well to increase that sharing, but also we're looking at very strategic, global level geopolitics driven um, concerns, basically. And that's my area of expertise. So,
I know that's why I went there, because actually the conversation I was mentioning before with Jen yesterday and Alisa was about the fact that things have changed, and now really Jen main goal as the agency representative and everybody working there is to connect with the private sector, work together, hiring more people that collaborate and that have experience from the private sector. So it looks to me that things have changed, as you mentioned, quite a bit. How about a view on the future? I mean, do you think this transformation, which is the theme of this year RSA conference, is going to also transform itself, like a different transformation, or are we on a path that we're going to keep following?
I keep hearing a lot about AI in this in this
What's
year's
that?
conference. um, and it seems to me that everyone has settled into the reality that AI will be driving technology in the future. I heard a talk yesterday where they were literally talking about algorithm warfare. We're going to be training computers against computers in the future. And so that is really enthralling to me. Also kind of scary, but as a threat intel analyst, I'm thinking, what does that look like in the future? What does the future of espionage and cyber espionage look like if we're really training algorithm versus algorithm? Who has the stronger algorithms? Who has the fastest technology? And they were talking about how 5G in America is not really 5G speeds. If you compare it to what maybe China has with 5G, we need to get on the same level playing field if we're going to be training computers against computers.
And I want to connect that to kind of what Marco was asking earlier, because I think I can't remember if it was Rick McElroy mentioned this, just kind of the collaboration of vendors. So rather than viewing each other as competitors, but joining forces to work together. And obviously we're talking about collaboration between public and private sector. And there are known alliances between countries. And I'm wondering, do we end up in alliances versus alliances on the cyber scale, or where do you think things are heading there?
Yeah, I think it's a sticky situation because we have our military allies and we have some strategic partnerships around the world where we've committed to, like, for example, Biden has recently been more forthright with his commitments to help protect Taiwan in case of Chinese aggression. But as we know, administrations change every 4 years in the US, so those policies may also change. Um, and with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we're starting to see nation states taking sides and starting to create these separate axes, basically. And it's really interesting how it's playing out, especially with China and Russia having such strong influence in parts of the world like Latin America, Africa, and South Asia. And they're trying to pose to the world that they have a better system of governance than the West. And so we're starting to see countries and regimes take sides. So I think it's going to become increasingly polarized over the next several years. And I think the technology and the intelligence sharing will also follow those same patterns.
Which is fascinating, the work you're involved with, because it's not just a cyber attack, but it's the information and misinformation and disinformation that drives some of those political forces and directions. And I think the other thing I want your quick thoughts on, and maybe, I don't know, we probably should have a whole conversation on this, Marco, but just because I know you went to the information gathering birds of a feather, and I know Chris Pearson did a session on hacking back this week at RSA conference as well. And it's a fine line between gathering information to use it to protect yourself, maybe hinder the adversary, to then take the adversary out or cause damage on the other side. And I'm just wondering, do you see a hard line there, or is that a really gray area? And maybe what are your thoughts on intelligence, espionage, hacking back, and that kind of that stream of stuff?
Yeah, when it comes to analyzing disinformation campaigns, it has been pretty passive so far. We've been observing, reporting, and making it public, which I feel is the first step, exposing the campaigns, exposing their TTPs, and showing the world, hey, not only are they lying, or not only are they providing their deep fake videos and photos and revealing those techniques, but we're also detailing out exactly how they do it and what their objectives are. So raising that awareness and exposing them, it disrupts them a little. And then in the Birds of the Feather session I was in this morning, she talked about exposing the adversary, affecting them, like having an impact on them and adding a cost, like making it very costly for them to conduct that type of campaign. And then number 3 was elicit intelligence from them, which is the last step. And I think it's a little more challenging. But when we come to influence operations, like malign, coordinated influence ops, I think we're doing good at exposing. We can do better at affecting them and creating a costly impact on their operation. And I really am excited to kind of get into that elicit step. I really want to use honeypot accounts to collect information on what are they looking for, what are they trying to influence the rest of the world towards or away from. And right now, our adversaries are pretty much on the same page. They are anti-US, anti-NATO, and anti-West, and pro their own country. So we're seeing some of those overlaps. But I definitely want to get more into the eliciting intelligence from these fake accounts and bot accounts, and really digging into those campaigns.
I tell you what, I was just sharing this conversation on Twitter, and because we're streaming live, and I just committed there for a podcast with you. So I hope I hope I didn't overstep.
You accept, Charity.
But now I propose, so you're going to have to say yes, and we're going to talk about all of that. I mean, hacking back and political scenarios, and I want to go deeper in that on redefining society. So this is going to have to be stopped here because we have other connection. And I honestly, I would just keep recording this as the podcast, but I know you have other things to do. We'll connect with other cool people that we know there, as cool as you are. And I want to thank you so much. It was a pleasure seeing you, sharing your views on things happening right now. Very, very relevant, of course, on the news. And yeah, let's go deeper. How
It's
about that?
always good to talk to you guys. Miss you so much.
Yeah,
All right.
big hugs. Thank you, Charity.
Virtual hug. Bye.
All right,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Stay
Bye-bye.
tuned for more. We
Yeah.
have loads going on
Coming
today.
up.